Look at his face. He picked those flowers 20 minutes ago, and his hands will not stop shaking. She is standing right there, and she has no idea what he is doing. Nobody has invented this yet. So how does a first date work when dating does not exist? Ancient humans fell in love. That part is not in doubt. What nobody agrees on is what it looked like when there was no word for it, no wedding, and no way to tell anybody afterwards. We do have a grave. In a cave up in the mountains, a Neanderthal man went into the ground around 60,000 years ago. Decades later, someone put the soil from around his body under a microscope and found pollen. Not dusted across the dirt, clumped. Whole flower heads sitting in tight groups where his chest used to be. Yarrow, cornflower, groundsel. Somebody, the story goes, filled that grave with flowers. It became the most famous burial ever found. It took the Neanderthal and turned him overnight. Grunting brute one day. The next, a man who brings you something yellow because you are dead and he cannot stand it. Hold on to that image. I am going to take it away from you before this is over. Your dating pool was about 20 people. That is the size of a band, 20 to 40 bodies moving together, sharing meat, sleeping under the same overhang. Every face in that camp is your mother, your uncle, your sister, or somebody your sister already married. Picture a dating app with 19 profiles on it. You are related to 17 of them. The other 2 are 8 years old. We know exactly how tight it got. A single Neanderthal toe bone carried a whole genome, and that genome says her parents were close relatives, half-siblings, or something very near it. She was not a freak accident either. The same pattern shows up again and again in Neanderthal remains. Now run that forward. A group that only breeds inside itself gets sicker every generation. Fewer children survive. The line thins and stops. So either every human band on Earth quietly rotted from the inside, or somebody worked out how to meet a stranger. They worked it out, and the proof came out of frozen ground wearing 5,000 beads. Under permafrost, 34,000 years old, there are graves that make no sense. An old man in one, 2 children in another, laid head to head, skull touching skull, all of them buried under beads carved from mammoth ivory. One of the children went into the ground wearing 5,000 of them. Somebody sat with a piece of tusk and made every one of those beads by hand. The estimate is roughly an hour each. Do that arithmetic on a child. Thousands of hours of carving put into a hole in the ground on purpose. The beads are not the shocking part. When the bodies were sequenced, the people buried together turned out not to be close family. In a world of 20-person camps, that should be impossible. These bands were not marrying inside themselves. They were sending people out and taking people in on purpose, and they had done it long enough that it shows in the genome. That is not instinct. That is a rule somebody enforced. And they were not the only ones. In a cave, a whole Neanderthal group died together, and their bones were sequenced as a set. The adult men all shared the same maternal line. The adult women, every one of them, came from somewhere else. So the women walked. Group to group, generation after generation, somebody's daughter left home and did not come back. Which means the walk to another group was a real walk, to real strangers who had every reason to say no. You did not turn up empty-handed. In a rock shelter, in a layer 130,000 years old, somebody found 8 eagle talons. They come from white-tailed eagles. The claws are cut and notched, and the surfaces are polished smooth from rubbing against something. Cord, probably. Skin. Somebody strung eagle claws together and wore them. There were no sapiens in Europe yet. This is Neanderthal work. Ochre turns up everywhere too. Red rock, ground into powder, mixed with fat, smeared onto skin. Nobody needed it for anything except being seen. Nobody wears eagle claws to stay warm. I think about whoever pulled those talons off the bird, and I cannot make it mean anything except that they wanted to be looked at. The oldest version of this is not jewelry at all. It is in your mouth. Every other great ape male carries daggers. Long, sharp canines, and they are not for chewing. They are for other males, in fights over females. Watch a chimp yawn sometime. Yours are flat, blunt, the same size as the ones in your mother's mouth. That shrinking happened millions of years before the first tool, the first fire, the first bead. The weapons left our faces before anything else about us changed. If fighting stopped deciding who mated, something else had to. Carrying things, sticking around, and being chosen. There is one bone in this story the size of your fingernail, and it settles all of it. Not yet. A female chimpanzee advertises. When she is fertile, the skin swells and turns bright pink, and you can see it across a clearing. Every male in the group knows there is no guessing. Human females do not do this. No swelling, no color, no scent anybody can read reliably. Nothing happens on the outside at all. She does not always know either. We are one of very few animals that hides it completely. Think about what that does to a male. The chimp gets a notification, he shows up for the window, competes, and goes back to ignoring her. A human male gets nothing, no signal and no window. His only working strategy is to never leave. That is not romance. That is the absence of information. And it changes what a relationship has to be. If you cannot tell when it matters, then it always matters. So you stay for the food, the shelter, the child, the winter. The pair bond is not a feeling somebody invented. It is what happens when nobody can see the calendar. And if you cannot read her body from across the clearing, you have to get close. Close enough to read her face. Kissing is not human nature. Anthropologists went looking for romantic kissing across the world's societies and found it in fewer than half of them. In plenty of places, the idea is considered actively unpleasant. The oldest written kisses we have are pressed into clay. Tablets from Mesopotamia describe it, complain about it, and set rules about who is allowed to do it with whom. It was already old by the time anybody wrote it down. Chimpanzees and bonobos do it too. So mouths were meeting long before there was a word for it. And something came along for the ride. Herpes simplex 1. The cold sore. Ancient DNA pulled out of teeth shows the strain almost everybody now carries spread fast during the Bronze Age. That was when huge numbers of people were moving and mixing. The suspected vehicle is the kiss. 2/3 of the planet is carrying a souvenir from a first date nobody remembers. It is a family heirloom you did not ask for and cannot give back. None of this tells you how far people were willing to go. That is what the fingernail is for. In a cave in the frozen north, there is a bone fragment about the size of your fingernail. It came out of a bag of unidentified scraps. It is roughly 90,000 years old, and it belonged to a girl who died around 13. They sequenced her. Her mother was a Neanderthal. Her father was a Denisovan. Two different kinds of human, separated for hundreds of thousands of years, and she is the direct product of both. Not a distant signal in the genome, not ancestry from somewhere deep in the tree. First generation. Her parents met. They were in the same place at the same time, and they had a daughter, and the daughter lived to 13. I keep thinking about the two of them. Different species, different bodies, probably not one shared word between them, and they raised a child. She is not alone in the record either. A jawbone from another cave belonged to a man whose Neanderthal ancestor sat 4 to 6 generations back. That is a great-great-great-grandmother. That is somebody he could have heard stories about, and it did not stop there. If your ancestry runs outside Africa, 1 to 2% of your genome is Neanderthal. It is in your skin, your hair, and the way your immune system reacts to a virus. Everybody in this story kept meeting somebody they were not supposed to meet. You are the evidence. Now the flowers. That Neanderthal grave sits in country that belongs to a rodent called the Persian jerd. Jerds dig burrows. Jerds fill those burrows with whole flower heads, packed in clumps as a winter store. Go back and look at the pollen in that grave, whole flower heads in tight clumps lying along the lines where the burrows run. The most famous act of tenderness in prehistory may be a rodent's pantry. I resented that rodent for a solid week, which I know is not a rational position. But the man was buried. Somebody dug for him and laid him down, and that part is not in dispute, whatever was living in the soil afterwards. And in a field, 2 skeletons came out of the ground about 6,000 years old, arranged face to face. Foreheads almost touching, arms around each other, legs tangled together. Nobody had to arrange pollen there. Somebody turned 2 bodies toward each other and covered them up. The position held for 6,000 years. That is longer than writing has existed. So look at his face again. Whatever he is feeling right now will not fossilize. Not 1 second of it. What survives is the walking to another camp, and the beads, and the eagle claws, a fingernail of bone in a cold cave, 2 skulls turned toward each other in a field. Everything we know about how ancient humans fell in love. We know because somebody kept doing the inconvenient thing. He is still standing there with the flowers. She still has no idea what they are for. He hands them over anyway. Thanks for watching. All the sources and studies used in this video can be found in the description below.